Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I begin in the name of Allah, whose grace, guidance and mercy we seek in this and all matters. Blessings and salutations on our noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions and all those who follow him. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Get Real with Islamic Care Line and my name is Suraya Nawab. Our topic for the program today is on spousal roles and responsibilities. And I looked at a topic and I just didn't want to say that. So I call it He Says, She Says, because I think that that is the basis of where we're going today towards in terms of spousal roles and responsibilities, because it's becoming more competitive than complementary. And to discuss the topic today, I have Appa Zaira Karim, who's the founder and principal of Ummahat Madrasa, who many viewers will recognize. And I thought I'll steal some of her very valuable time to discuss this today. So welcome, Zaira, for being here and for giving us your time. Okay, as I introduce the topic in terms of he says, she says, we know that the whole centrality of the family, the couple, as a basic socio-economic unit of society is changing. It's a different narrative now than what it has to be or what it used to be. How do you see it, and what can you add to that?
Firstly, I like the he said, she said attribute to this whole thing, but I also feel like we should add they said, because you know, every time you ask someone, like, since when do you do a thing like that, they say no, but they say you must do this, they say you must do that. Who are these people? Where do they come from? What's going on? So I'm really glad to have a show like this, because alhamdulillah, it's things are going out of hand. So yes, we are moving forward in a sense that the ilm that has been provided now in comparison to back then is different, right? But I think a lot of us are still stuck in that cultural aspect, and so in terms of that, we're not moving forward. So the knowledge is there, but we have our families and they have expectations, and that's when things get a bit out of hand.
Do you think the process of modernization has a lot to do with how we've changed our perception of spousal roles?
I would say it has changed, in fact helped. It maybe made life more easier, the fact that couples are becoming more modern, thinking in a way that is more open, things like that. I would say it helps to get us out of the culture that we've been brought up with here, but also it's disturbing in a sense that being overly modern and moving away from the Sharia, and that's what I want to try and make a very important aspect in this show today, is that you can't be too much of a modern human being and you can't be too much of a cultural human being. You have to meet in the middle, and we have to start being Muslims, and that's where we're getting lost.
I think Islam all around, whichever aspect of it we look at, the central point about it is having a balance, right? And I think that's what you're alluding to here, in terms of you can't be overly religious to the point where you lose the essence of today in terms of spousal roles and responsibilities. And you're right, in a sense it's actually made it easier for us, because the difference between Islam and Muslim is there. Okay, Islam says one thing, but we practicing as Muslims are taking on too many cultural aspects into our lives, which is complicating the whole matter. So basically we know that Allah created men and women differently. Okay. Does that make either one better than the other?
You see, the Quran doesn't say a man is better than a woman. It says daraja. He has a rank above a woman. And that's what all listeners, I hope you tuned into the show, is that you're not better. No one is better. Only your deeds make you better. But a ranking above woman would obviously then mean, you see, a woman can't, well, shouldn't be in the corporate field, getting this big fat salary and then providing for her home. So that's the advantage or the daraja that a man has. The man's role that makes him one up on a woman is that she sits at home like a queen and he goes out and he takes that extra step and he brings an income in, he provides for the family, and he is a daraja. He is one up on her because he provides for the family, something which women don't necessarily have to do. So it's not that either is better, it's that he has a role extra to play that we don't, fortunately.
Yeah. Okay, it's also very similar to this whole debate about a woman going to masjid, right? The way I look at it, it's actually a blessing to you as a woman, because you're this nurturer in the home, whether you're working or not, whether you're an income earner as part of the, and we know today most homes need to be supplemented with income because of the rising cost of living and standard of living and things like that. So despite that, a woman will still go out and maybe have a part-time job or a sessional job, whatever it is, and still come back, and she's still seeing to all the needs of the home, the children and all that. And then to know it's Asr time and I have to be gone to masjid, or it's Maghrib time, and for me it's actually in the favor of women to be able to come home, quickly run into the bathroom, have a shower after a long tiring day, whatever, and seeing to your children, and in the comfort of your home you can just pray your salah. You can just be. So I know there's an argument for women going to masjid. Yes. I know that, but I just want to flip it around a little bit for people to think about this whole thing about spousal roles a bit differently, you know. So having said that, and you made it clear that no one is better than the other, and we know the ayat of the Quran that mentioned that we are only judged as better than each other through our piety, rather than our taqwa, rather than our deeds, our actions rather. So, in today's world, the way we live as Muslims, and you mentioned that we need to be Muslim, we need to live our lives as Muslims. What would you say are some of the important things that we need to look at and do to be able to implement that Muslimness?
See, I think there's a very intense question, because it's not difficult to be a Muslim, it's more difficult to be cultural. So first let's understand that there's a big difference between being a cultural Muslim and being a Muslim. Because culture means I cook a certain way because my mother cooks that way, my mother's mother. We have certain days where we eat certain foods, we dress a certain way, whatever. That's culture. We've taken it now to another level where the daughter-in-law must live with the mother-in-law and she must cook on this day and do that. And then that's when you're messing with Islam. And that's when you're messing with being a Muslim. So a Muslim has rights. A woman has rights, a male has rights. In culture, you're following what your forefathers did, something which is mentioned in the Quran, that they just follow their forefathers and what their forefathers say, but they do not follow the truth. And we're all following in that category as opposed to being Muslim, where we're following the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a big problem.
Yeah. And people lose their way because they try and juggle all these things in their lives together. And then what we find is also, when it suits them, then they would go with one sort of way of living, and when it suits them the other way around, then they would go with being modern or being this a modern wife or husband.
Yeah, and I think it's what's convenient and what's inconvenient.
So I think again it's finding that balance and being consistent in that. The other thing I want to talk about is that we know, and we're touching on this, but I know again it's going to be a long explanation, is that for me, when I try and make sense of our Sharia regarding spousal roles and responsibilities and everything else, but specifically about spousal roles and responsibilities, the first thing I want to say is that we all have rights, as you said, but we also all have responsibilities. And in Islam, no responsibility can be too big or too small, and no right can be earned if you're not responsible for doing something, right? So, I look at it as Islam talking about equity between the spouses rather than equality. Because Allah, in His wisdom, made us differently for a reason. What do you think this equity is about in terms of spousal roles?
See, when there's a woman and there's a man together, like we're saying, we're not equal because things make us different, the deen makes us different, whatever it is. But I'm going to use an example of a mouse, right? Now there's a woman in a kitchen and a mouse runs past. This woman's going to scream and she's going to jump on one of the units or whatever. A man will come running with a bat and hit the mouse, right? And that's how we're different, you see. So that's where that comes in, that the men bring the strength. They bring the sustenance, the food, whatever it may be, into the house. And then the women are the caretakers. And like that, we balance our homes. Because if you look at Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Hazrat Khadija, the first example of marriage in our religion, he ran to her for support, to their home. And she was there with open arms waiting for him, and she accepted him. And so we learn from that that's who we are. And he comes from outside with whatever it is that he has. And that's how we make that balance within our home.
Because you, as a woman in the home, and again, this does not in any way make the one higher or better than the other. But we in the home, if they're coming into the home from outside and the effects of outside and what they are exposed to outside, we are the warmth and the nurturance and the space, that warm space, that security, right? And again, and you are much more qualified than me to talk about this, and that whole statement about you are a garment unto them and they are a garment unto you, it's exactly that. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
See, I think what both men and women and social media, Facebook, all these things, is ruining that ayat to another level. Because you see, what we do in our home, your clothing covers you. It conceals you. It hides your faults. If you've sinned, it hides that even. You know, you've got some scars on your body, it's going to hide your defects. And when Allah says that you are a garment for one another, garments even keep you warm. You know, you're cold and you're shivering and someone holds you, you feel warm, you feel comforted. So there's so many different ways of looking at this garment, but we're taking selfies and we're posting it up. And we have issues, so we change our Facebook status. We get divorced, so we change our profile to divorced on Facebook. And so this whole aspect of spouses being garments to one another, instead of concealing one another and covering us and comforting us, we have now flipped the garment upside down and we're revealing everything. So it's going completely contrary to what is in our Quran. So understand something, the viewers of ITV, that when Allah says you are a garment to your spouse, it means when your husband says something to you, it stays with you. If I tell my clothing something, the next person that looks at my clothes are not going to talk about it, right? If I've got wounds, it conceals it. If I have a defect or a weakness, it conceals me. And it gives me warmth, and it gives me character. And so sometimes your spouse also, they complement us, and they give us character. So try and avoid that social media to the extent where the whole dunya knows what is going on. And you know, I saw this on Facebook recently where someone even said, like, now all of a sudden you're not posting anything, you're leaving everyone in suspense. We've been following your relationship for so long, you know. So stay garments to one another, be those garments to one another. And also, my clothing won't necessarily fit you. You see, so that person was made for me. We fit one another. So we stick to one another, you see.
Okay, that's such an innovative way of explaining that whole garment covering each other from the Quran, and Jazakallah for that. Again, when we come to spousal roles and responsibilities, what are some of the practical things? We're talking about the Quran, and we're talking about us as Muslims and how we've changed the whole perception. But there's a lot of simplicity in the different or differentiation of male and female roles and responsibilities. And no one is better than the other, again, and no one is more important than the other, but there has to be a complementary nature between them. So what I'm thinking about in terms of practical terms is that in our communities, if you're chatting to somebody and they say, you know, oh, my husband just put the laundry into the washing machine. 3/4 of the people around you, especially females, if they are females, all females, will be like in absolute disgust, right? Like, you actually let your husband do that, like, I mean, you know. And if they are males, it will be like look at that sissy, you know, he is doing the laundry, you know. Our Prophet ﷺ used to mend his own clothes. I mean, what are we missing there?
We've lost the plot completely. I don't know where, how, what happened, but we lost the plot completely. Like I said, if I ask another woman, hey, who did you get? I heard you got married. Who did you marry? Oh no, so and so. You know, their surname is this, and they come from this. The father owns this, but you don't know them. Yeah. But that's how you're describing your husband. Why can't you just say, Alhamdulillah, his name is Muhammad, he's a Muslim, and we're very happy. Yes. Why do you have to explain your naam, gam, everything, the father's father, where they work from? It doesn't make a difference to who you are in your marriage. It doesn't add character to your spouse in any way. It doesn't make your marriage happy. It doesn't make your... In fact, it's just like this outer happiness where you get this joy of saying it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're happy. So try to avoid that. And ask yourself, how Muslim are we in our relationship? You know, I recall a story of Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, where there was a narration of her, actually, she was making bread, and it was on a hot plate. And they're making this bread, and the Nabi of Allah comes to help her. And he's helping her, but the bread isn't getting cooked. Yeah. And so she looks at the Nabi of Allah and she says, how now, what is it with you? You can't even make bread. And he looks at Hazrat Aisha and he says that, but oh Aisha, don't you know, whatever I touch cannot burn. So there he was in the kitchen and they were making bread together. And I mean, like you said, you tell someone, my husband cooked a meal for me. Yes. It's like, oh, he's being abused, the poor guy, what did he get himself into?
Or how inefficient is she?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, she can't even cook a pot of food, you know. So I think we are missing the centrality of sharing the chores that we have in our everyday lives, to be able to build this happiness in a home that is a marriage that is not only happy, but also that is exemplary for our children. Yes. For our children, you know. And so for me, that's a big point we're missing, because we as a couple, myself and my husband, you and your husband, you are role models for your children, your nieces, nephews, people around you. And if they see you complementing each other in the most beautiful possible way. And sometimes with husbands, again, I want to talk about practical things. Sometimes with husbands, you know, they just, and maybe even as they get older or whatever, you know, moods change. And like with me, our relationship changed a lot when I got ill, right? And you think everything is going so hunky-dory and smoothly and everything, and suddenly Allah will present something to you. Yes. And it changes the paradigm of your normal relationship, right? But if you make it something that grows, if you make it something beautiful in terms of learning from it and learning about the changes that each of you can so resiliently do, it's a blessing.
It enhances your
relationship. Enhances it. And isn't that what spousal roles and responsibilities are about? Definitely. It's about enhancing your relationship all the time. Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You on Get Real with Islamic Care Line, a program on ITV. Today our topic is He Says, She Says, and it's on spousal roles and responsibilities. And with me is my guest, Appa Zaira Karim. And Zaira, we were talking about how your roles, your different roles as husband and wife or father and mother can enhance your relationship.
Yes.
Rather than it being a competition.
Yes. I don't know if the viewers are familiar with the incident where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam got the responsibility of being a Nabi. And I mean, that's like your husband coming home and saying, you know what, he has this new job, you know you know, it's ridiculous. He's seeing something from the unseen. He's telling you what he saw and how he has a new book and a new revelation. And this is what Hazrat Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha was faced with. And she just merely looked at him and said to him, I believe in you. And I believe that what you are saying is true. And in the first story in the history of Islam, we learn that when a man comes to a woman with a problem, she enhances him. She doesn't throw him down.
Yes.
And when a woman goes to a man for help, he doesn't bring her down, he enhances her. And like that, your relationship should become better. Yes, it's okay to tell someone, I think you're being ridiculous or whatever, but to enhance them in ways that are going to make them.
Which actually should be the very crux or one of the founding, the building blocks of your relationship from the very beginning, you know. And what I also want to say is that sometimes, you know what, as I said, sometimes there's terminal illness, sometimes you have older parents you're looking after, or the kids are particularly challenging or something. So you'll have your days when you are a bit unreasonable or something. But in that way, your husband also has that. And sometimes they come and say the most ridiculous things, yes, and you know it. But I think it's that understanding of him to say, you know what, let me just hold my guard a little bit now. When he's in a better mood, I'll explain to him what a silly thing he said or did. Yes. You know. But today, I find, I don't know if it is this just do it now, or this immediate gratification thing, yes, world that we live in. On the one hand, on the other hand, that I need to have my say. Yes. You know, that immediately you'll snap back.
But it's like our marriages are competitions, and it's not a competition. It's a lifelong journey. You're meant to walk with this man hand in hand into Jannah. Whether he wins a fight or you win a fight, it's not going to help anyone. You need to come to a conclusion where you guys are going to be able to look at each other with more muhabbat. And he appreciates your feedback and he respects you for that, instead of, like I said, bringing them down for everything. Because there is no scoreboard. In fact, the more you make him happy, the more you're going to win with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a game.
Yeah. Okay, in terms of spousal roles again, I also find, and maybe we touched on it a little bit, I also find that couples have unrealistic expectations of each other from the beginning of the marriage, and that may be because they don't know each other so well. But
it is because they watch too many Indian movies. I'm just going to be real here. The show is called Keep It Real, Get Real. Life is not an Indian movie. It's not a series. It's not an Indian movie. It's a long life commitment that has nothing to, no song is going to play when you say it. Yeah. And there isn't an audience watching you. Yeah. So come away from that and move to Islam.
Yeah. Okay, so, and as I said, in terms of expectations, the expectations also change as you go along this journey of being married, but they still remain unrealistic, because you'll expect something of your spouse and it doesn't happen. You'll expect him to do something and he doesn't do it. And the way you resolve that is, again, going directly against being complementary. Definitely. You know? So I don't know if you want to mention something.
You see, when Hazrat Khadija showed interest in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, she proposed to him. She didn't have this expectation that, you know, maybe he'll come to me. Let's wait and see what happens. He's a guy, I'm a girl, let me wait. She wanted something. She went to him. They made nikah. She was a woman who knew what she wanted. Now we want our husbands to buy us roses and flowers and whatever it is. You're going to wait forever. If you want roses, buy him a rose. Maybe
Ask him.
Tell him that, you know what, it would really make me happy if I got a rose once a month. You know, guys don't know what you want. You don't know what they want. You have to communicate with one another. So I think a lot of unrealistic expectations come when you don't speak to one another. But speaking, like the most simplest of things, I don't like purple. Say it to him. Then when he buys you a purple flower, it's not going to irritate you, you know. But if you're not going to communicate, there's going to be this unrealistic, you're going to wish one day he walked in with something he doesn't know, and there's just a barrier between you. So they say there's no such thing as lack of communication. It's more positive. There's no positive communication in marriages anymore.
You know, even when you remain silent, you're communicating.
Yes.
So I think communication is a big, we can probably do a whole program on that alone. We're coming to the end of the program. Is there anything in terms of passing comments on, specifically on spousal roles and responsibilities, that you want to mention?
See, I'd like to leave the listeners with just something to think about. For women, right? Your husbands are very visual. They're visual beings. They like nice things. So whether you studied and have 10 degrees and you have what, it doesn't make a difference to them. When they come home, they want to see someone that is presentable, not smelling like vagar and wearing tracksuit pants and their hair all unkept. And it's strange because when we leave our homes and our husbands are gone to work, we look amazing. And when we come home and they come back, we look ridiculous. So a message to the woman is they are very visual. Even if you didn't cook, but when he opens that door and you look amazing, he will be so happy to see you, right? And I'm keeping it real, right? And the men, on the for women on the other hand, we are emotional. So your husband can look like, I don't know, some of them, you know, their bellies and whatever, and other women think, how did you find this guy? And beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. All of that is well understood by women because we're emotional. So the day your husband says to you, I love you, you are beautiful, you mean the world to me, those are the things women love to hear. So we're not the same. They are visual. They want to see nice things. And we want to hear nice things. And when we get that right, then I think we can have another episode and talk about what his rights are and your rights are and all of that, inshallah.
Okay, so we've come to the end of this very interesting and different discussion. I think from the topic, what viewers expected and what we discussed was quite different. But I hope you all got the message. So thank you very much for joining us on Get Real with Islamic Care Line on ITV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.